theyeshiva.net.
So let's start Pei Gimel. V'hinei kolza. Zok the Balatanya. V'hinei kolza ubchinas eish al gabe hamizbeach. With this line, he summarizes the Maimer till now. Everything we spoke till now is dealing with the fire on top of the mizbeach. And here he makes a transition to the next stage, the next phase in this discourse, in this Maimer. What is the summation when he says kolza? What's kolza b'chinas eish al gabe hamizbeach? So let's summarize the kolza that the Maimer began that all year the predominant avodah in the Beis Hamikdash focused on karbonos. Karbonos meant the fire that burnt after everything else, a sprinkling of the blood, but the fire that consumed the animals, the bulls, the rams, the sheep and the goats. That's all year. Sukkos, there's a new avodah. The avodah of Ushe'avtem Mayim. Every morning, they're pouring water on the mizbeach, which of course the whole Simchas Beis HaShe'eva revolves around that mitzvah, because they would dance a whole night, and then in the morning at dawn they would blow shofar and go with a procession to the famous Shiloach spring to get the water, to draw the water, Ushe'avtem Mayim b'sasan, and come back and pour the water on the mizbeach. The kohen would pour the water on the mizbeach, together with the wine that was poured every day, together with Nisach Hayah. In Sukkot 7 days there was Nisach Mayim. Shmini Atzeres, he says, which is what he started with, is Tia Lachem. Everything becomes Lachem. To understand all this, he gave a Hakdama that now when there's no Beis Hamikdash, and there's no physical karbonos, and there's no physical Mizbeach, so Tzarech Kol Echad Limtzei Divrei Chayfetz B'nafshay, everybody has to have the courage and the serenity and the vision to be able to find all the experiences of Yiddishkeit within their own soul. They can't rely anymore on the action is happening. The action is happening inside here. That's where the action is happening. Right? Which is in itself a very important idea, that the action is never happening there. The action is always in the person himself. I have to be able to find it in my nefesh, in my heart. And he says that's true about everything. To understand that everything exists in a person's heart. So in every generation, one has to be able to find the fire that burns up the karbonos. One has to find the water that is poured in themselves. And one has to find the Shmini Atzeres that brings it all together. And he says, B'chol dor v'dor. The mashmos from this is that in every generation it could be a little different. In other words, what's the meaning of the fire in every generation? You can't always compare it to another generation. Because l'chayre, what's b'chol dor? Always. So he says, no, b'chol dor chayev liris b'nafshe inyan b'chinas eish, an inyan of the Mayim. In order to explain this, he first deals with eish, till Pei Gimel. Aleph and Beis was eish, and then Gimel is Mayim, which is Sukkos. So Aleph and Beis is really not the focus on Sukkos, it's the Hakdama. What's the eish? So Perek Aleph, the Nekuda was that in every Jew there's a fire. That fire is not his own avodah. That fire is an inborn gift. It's called Eish Shalamayla. Just like in the Mizbeah, in the Beis Hamikdash, an Eish Shalamayla, in the image, in the visage, the dmus of an Arya, of a lion. The Gemara says in Yuma Chaf Aleph, Revutza Kari. The fire was like a crouched lion, a lev was licked. So the same is true. This Eish is called an Arya, as he explains, Ka'arya Yishag, Achri Hashem Elokechem Teilechu Ka'arya Yishag, and this Eish just needs to be revealed and actualized, and that's the avoid of Tefillah, Keneket Midden Tiknum, to be able to get in touch with your own inner, true, divine fire and passion that exists, even though it could be plugged, or repressed, or concealed, or blocked, or relegated to the subconscious cellars of the human soul, and sometimes sub, and sometimes sub, and a little more. So daf min grab, and you got to dig. But the Eish is there, and because the Eish is there, therefore we call it an Eish Shalamayla, and that fire is the only fire that can burn up all the other fires in a person's life. Without that fire, You can't expect a technical Judaism to compete with a passionate world. It's impossible. You can't define a Judaism only on what you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to do this, 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 without giving people a passion, an aish, a fire. Because if I don't give people a passion, all I tell them is, the religion is not this, not this, not this. So you can't. So it's very, very difficult to compete with all the passion that's out there. It could be fake passion, it could be superficial passion, it could be sometimes destructive passion. But passion it is. And this is the biggest passion in daily life is, he says, the stress to make a living. Because that's almost visible, it almost looks like good passion. Making a living is not a bad thing, it's not an addiction. It's a good thing, it's yigiya kapecha kiseichel. But the daig of it, the stress of it, is how we give ourselves passion sometimes. It's a fascinating observation. And people need passion, and therefore the most easy available passion is to be stressed about life. If you're stressed, it looks like stress, but on some psychological level, it's also passion. The ikid is you're busy with something. You're overwhelmed. You're overwhelmed. Passion overwhelms. Aish is very powerful. It's intense. So the Gemara says you're not allowed to eat before davening, because till davening a person is not in the mental state where they're capable of eating the way a person needs to eat, which is always to be in a place above the food where I can elevate the food. Where before davening, I'm like the food. I myself need an aliyah. Before davening, I'm still not in touch with my fire, so therefore I'm myself in the p'china of the food. That's a shalamayla. But before a shalamayla, there's a shalamata. Every morning the koyanim had to ignite a fire on the mizbeach. They used to do what's called the marachas. There were different groups of lumber, wood that they put on the mizbeach. And they had to make a fire. They couldn't say, you'll bring the carbon and the fire will come down. That's not enough. Mitzvah la'avi min ha'edyet, says the Gemara. And fakir, that was the first thing they did in the morning. That was the hachana. That was the preparation that the Eish Shalamayla comes down. The Eish Shalamayla comes down where there's an Eish Shalamata. What type of Eish? Min ha'edyet. What is this in Ruchnis? Physically, we know what it is. They had to take wood and make a fire. It was a system, how it worked. We speak about the marachas, and Abaya have a Mesader, Seder HaMarachim, Mishmad the Gemara, Marach Gdoila, Marach Ktana, the whole Sugya and Yuma, different marachas, groups of wood that they put on the Mizbech and the position, how you learn it out from the Psukim and Parshas Tzaf. What is the Avodah here? We're talking about the Avodah inside the person. So the Balatanya explains this by explaining the pasuk Smoiloi Tachas L'Roishi V'Yaminoi Techapkeini. Right? There's two Avodas. Yaminoi Techapkeini is the experience of Yamin, which is Gilui, Chesed, Av, that embraces you. It's when the Shamas Yisrael, when the Tzutzes can feel the tremendous affection towards them, the indispensable value in them, which brings people closer, which elevates people, and they feel that they're in a grip, in a chibuk, which a chibuk is not only an expression of love, but it's such an expression of love where you can't leave, you're gripped, you're in my grip. It's not like another expression of love. You have kisses, you have looking at somebody, you have talking to somebody, and all the other places, and all the other expressions the person can go. In chibuk, eina yachal lehipared. In other words, it's inseparable. Which spiritually, what that means is that it's such a powerful love where nothing can change it, nothing can alter it, nothing can destroy it. That's the power of Yamin Techapkeini. But the Balatanya says sometimes one can't even reach to that place. And the reason they can't reach that place, as we explained, is I have to be able to receive it. I have to be able to experience it. I have to be able to feel it. I have to be able to be open to it. And very often there's too many things blocking it. And it becomes a very tragic situation. Because the chibuk, you see even physically, sometimes you'll try to hug a person and they will not let you. Huh?
Put a hand like this.
They will not let you. It's too much. 40 years I'm used to a different mahalach. We just don't do this. Let's not alter it. I'm talking physically, but of course emotionally it's even deeper than that. And therefore you need the smoiloi tachas l'roishi. What's tachas l'roishi? My head. I have to take the midas hasmoil, which is midas hayire, which is the concept of small doicha. I have to be able to have the courage to open myself up to all the things that are distancing me from the divine, all the things in my life, whether it's thoughts, words, actions, a way of thinking. It's the paradigms that I'm comfortable with, and I'm ready to push myself off my step. I'm ready to really challenge myself, which later he calls charisha. It's plowing up the land, plowing the earth. Where you're turning over, the Gemara says, "Merapi arem, mach shvach the erd, me shokelt of the erd." You till the earth. We call it you till the earth. You mahapach the karka, and that's the pchin of zoireya tzedakos. Jews are associated with tzedakah. Jews give tzedakah. Jews give tzedakah and chesed. That's a yid. He says lamata also. Lamaila they're called tzedakah. Lamata they're called tzedakah. That's what qualifies the Jew. The Gemara in Yavam is by Shanim Rachmanim, Goyim Lechasadim. It's an interesting word from the Bnei Yissaschar I once saw. I think in a Sefer Igru Dekala, one of his Svarim, I saw it once. He says that the Gemara says in Maseches Brachas that the beginning of Shemona Esrei you mention all the three Avos, Elokei Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and we learn it out from the Psukim in Lech Lecha. Hashem says Avarechecha, Vagad L'Shmecha, Vayei Bracha. That goes on him, his son, his grandson. Yachal yu chaismen b'kulon Talmud loymar v'nivruchu v'cha b'cha chaismen. At the end of the bracha, we don't say Magen Avraham, Magen Yitzchak, Magen Yaakov. Why not? He's the shield of Avraham. He's the shield of Yitzchak. The end is only Avraham. B'cha chaismen. So Bnei Yissaschar says hafla de kavart that throughout Galus, the Jewish people operated on three different levels. There's Jews who were very into giving chesed. Jews who their thing was avodah hatfilah is Yitzchak, Karbonis, Avkeda, and Yaakov is Torah, three kavim, and you could connect in different ways. Then comes a Galus, the Bnei Yissaschar didn't even know how right he was, with mass assimilation. You look at most Jews, they can't even read Aleph Beis. Most Jews, you have 16, 17 million Jews today, can't read Aleph Beis. We're sitting here among Jews who could read Aleph Beis, but most of Klal still can't read Aleph Beis. Never mind read Mishnayos, never mind read a Pasuk Chumash, never mind read a Rashi. Tefillah, most Jews don't know how to daven. Even those who officially know how to daven don't know how to daven, as we know. It's not so simple. B'cha chaismen, Yitzchak and Yaakov, throughout Golus, assimilation affected it. But the pchin of Avram, the idea that Jews give, that assimilation didn't affect. Sometimes they give for research of whales in New Zealand. Sometimes to save kangaroos, sometimes to save turtles, and sometimes for some causes that are maybe not the most moral or normal causes. But that's already the software. This is how they're expressing it. But the nekuda is, it's one quality that assimilation didn't destroy. B'cha chaismen, he said, Magen Avraham, I'm going to protect the midah of Avraham. That this quality of the Jewish people to give will never ever get lost, even with tremendous assimilation, when Torah and Tefillah were lost by many Jews. And even the Jews who have it, it's very interesting. So he says, Yidna called tzedakah, but the tzedakah needs to be planted. What's pshat planted? Needs to take root in the earth, and the only way it can be planted is if you plow the earth. And he says the mitzvahs a whole year, then tzedakah all year, it needs to go into the charisha, and the charisha, that's Haseres Yemei Tshuva and Yom Kippur. All the viduyim of Yom Kippur is the smoiloi tachas leroishi, the courage to be able to open yourself up to all the toxicity, all the venom, all the as he puts it, the richuk, the distance that comes between you and your truth and your fire, between you and your soul, between you and Hashem, between you and other people. That's the idea. That's why we ask Mechila before Yom Kippur. It's the same thing. You could be close to somebody, but there's a richuk, so we can't hug each other because there's too much sitting in my chest or your chest or both of our chests. And if I'm not ready to shake up the earth, it's not going to take root, and therefore it also won't grow. And he said, you see practically the difference between two people who give tzedakah. One gives tzedakah because he has money, but it's from a place of arrogance. And he says that person, you don't expect much, and don't expect camaraderie, because the whole yisoid is he just throws the bones. And the other person who did the chrisha, that's Avram Avinu, anoichi afar ve'efer. It's a different type of tzedakah. Zoireya tzedakahs, then matzmiach yeshuas, the matzmiach, the Yom Kippur starts growing, and Sukkos is the tzmicha. And then one can experience the yeminoi techapkeni, which is the Eisha L'mayla. So the Eisha L'mata is mitzvah lahavi min hahedyet. What's pshat min hahedyet? This I have to do. What says I have to do? I have to go into those places in my life that are peasant-like. Why? Because if I don't acknowledge them, if I don't look at them, if I don't create room for them, if I don't identify them, which is painful. Who wants to go there? Who wants to go to the hedyet? Who wants to go to that part that causes the distance? But if I'm not ready to go there and to look at it, so then ultimately it becomes a mechitza, it becomes a partition. It creates hard offer where nothing, there can't be any zri. The mitzvahs can't be nizr, the tzedakah can't be nizr, and ultimately I can't even feel and experience the yeminei techapkeni. So mitzvah lahavi min hahedyet means, he says, min dvarim tachtoinim, min milad dehedyoyte, when a person has to be able to discover that which causes pain, which creates an outcry, it creates a merirus, it creates a deep frustration, a tzoak libam. This is fascinatingly what allows the tremendous ava that exists in him because of the Eisha L'mayla to come down on the Mizbeach, which is the heart. The heart is called the Mizbeach.
So even though it's the Tzedakos, he says the real Charisha is the days of Aseres Yemei Tshuva.
Aseres Yemei Tshuva and Yom Kippur.
But still, nevertheless, Mitzvah Lavi Hedyot was every day. So presumably that at some level, that Charisha is still daily.
Avada.
Yeah, it's still a daily avoda.
Yeah. It's still a daily. And this we're going to see in everything. In other words, when he speaks about Mayim, you're going to see it's an avodah that relates to every day. But the concept is that every Yom Tov highlights a certain avodah that in the microcosm exists every day. But the Yom Tov accentuates it. That becomes the focus of it. A mashal would be a couple celebrates an anniversary. So this is the only day you celebrate your marriage. 364 days a year we fight. Once a year we say Mazel Tov, it's nice knowing you. Of course, if you're not celebrating 364 days a year, the anniversary, the anniversary is not going to look very good. Yeah. I once heard from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, he said in America they have what's called the Man of the Year. They announce every year, at the end of the year, too soon 2017, the Man of the Year. So he said, ich verstehe nicht, mit Manavshach. Is it a mensch? Is it a mensch? Is it a mensch, euch vor dem Jahr und nach dem Jahr? Und nicht kein Mensch, wie ist der Jahr, ist euch nicht kein Mensch. If he's a human being, so then he was a man before and after. And if not this year, he's also not a man. But I'll call upon him. So what's the idea? The idea is that there's days that we highlight the relationship. We focus. This is the day we're going to focus on our anniversary. A whole year we're stressed with this. You go out, you spend time, you talk, whatever. I mean, I'm just giving a mashal. That's the concept. So now we go transition from Eish to Mayim. So it says, Kol ze b'chinas Eish al gabe hamizbech. And in that itself, there was Perek Aleph and Perek Beis. Perek Aleph was Eish Shalamayla. Perek Beis was the Eish Shalamata, which is the Hedyet, tuning into the Hedyet. And that's also part of the Avodah. That's also part of the Avodah. Now remember, that part of the Avodah is not always an exciting part of Avodah, but it's part of the Avodah. And that itself is a very comforting idea. That to examine certain parts in yourself is Oichan Avodah. It's a Helik Avodah. It's not Pshat, over there's no Kedusha. That itself is Kedusha. People don't realize. Be able to confront stuff that I don't want to confront, and doing Chirisha, it's not planting, it's not harvesting, it doesn't have the glory of Matzmiach Yeshuas. But Zerei Tzedakos, which comes from Chirisha, is an Avodah. That's the Eish Shalamata. Fakir, that's the thing that I contribute. This is not a gift. This is what I do because this is the human experience. There's another dimension which is greater and higher. And that's the water that they poured on the altar on Sukkos. Why is this Madrega Gavoya? And what's Pshat even on Madrega Gavoya? You just said that the Eishes, there's an Ava that burns in the heart of the Jew. It roars like a lion. It's passionate. Hashem Elokecha Oichla. Person doesn't want to be separate. What's deeper? So he says, you see that water is marva. Marva means it quenches. It quenches, se verstilt, the tzimoyin, the dursh, the thirst that comes from the element of fire. Just as it is, partially biologically in a person's life, the Yisoid HaEsh represents the warmth and the heat of the person. It also represents the tzimoyin, the hydration of the body, and the mayim quenches the tzimoyin, so to speak, just like physical mayim extinguishes the eish or it cools the fire. So a person is thirsty and they drink water to quench the tzimoyin. K'may shekasav, the Navi says in Yeshaya, Hay chaltzame l'chula mayim. Hay is like, whoa, in Lashon Kodesh. Let every thirsty human being go to water. Why is he bringing a pasuk here? Kedarka, in Tanakh, you see this musuk that the mayim is what relaxes, it stills, it cools the heat, it calms the thirst. V'gam b'bchinas madreges mayim esh kam b'chinas shayna zu l'mayla mizu. What's v'gam? Just like by eish, we spoke this eish l'mayla and eish l'mata. Mayim also, it's not one type of mayim. There's one level of mayim and a deeper level of mayim and a deeper zu l'mayla mizu. So this mayim is going to discuss what mayim is, but he says in that itself you could do many b'chinas. Kediksiv, an example of the highest level would be Atarei Saladas. Ki Hashem hu alakim b'shamayim ha'alayich b'tachas einoid mulvadai. Moshe says, you have shown us to know that Hashem hu alakim. Hereisa b'ri'iyah chushas. The word is hereisa, you showed us. When somebody sees something, ri'iyah chushas, it's very visual, it's very real. Shu b'chinas bittul b'metzias legamri b'chinas ri'iyah. This represents a complete bittul, complete oneness, to the point that you could call it re'iyah. It's like when the person sees it and experiences as explained elsewhere, this is called water. It cools and it extinguishes the heat of the fire. Why? Since this person is in a state of complete oneness with Hashem, automatically the fire and the passion of the natural fire and the divine soul and the thirst that is as intense as a glowing flame becomes extinguished and becomes cooled down, because the person is in a state of mayim, which he's calling here bittul b'metzius. So you would think that cooling the fire is a chisaron. You have a fire burning. We're talking about a very powerful fire. It's a fire of the eish benafshei ha'elokis, the divine flame. But there's a deeper pchina than eish, and that's the mayim. What does mayim do? Mayim relaxes. Mayim cools the fire. Mayim extinguishes the flame. There's no flame anymore. You pour water, and the water has a power to extinguish the flame. That means there's a power in water that doesn't exist in fire. Despite the blazing koyach and potency of fire, which we all understand, the power of mayim is deeper than the power of eish. Its coolness and its properties extinguish the eish. So what is this in Avodah? That there's a pchina in Avodas Hashem that extinguishes the chayim ha'eish, it's mekara the chayim ha'eish, and it doesn't exist anymore, the fire. Now, l'chayda, when you read this, it's like, isn't this fire, you just broke agat some ma'isa, the fire, the ikka Hashem alakecha sheichel. So he gives a mosh. This is quite a mosh. K'moy l'moshel avos haben ala'av. Take the love of a child to a father. And we're talking here about a child and a father who have a deep and loving relationship consciously. The mashal exists with every child and father, but sometimes the eish is plugged. It's not there. Sometimes children and parents, there's a lot. Before you get to the immunity chapkeni, you have to get to the smoile tachas l'roishi, right? But I'm just bavaroning this because you're might ask, I don't have this with my father. I understand you may not have it with your father. But the mashal is nechalta mashal. And the nimshal is nechalta nimshal. In other words, to be zoiche to the Alter Rebbe's Meshalem is oicha schos. To be able to understand the Meshalem is oicha an inyan. It's not the nimshal, the mashal. K'may mashal avos haben alav. K'sheroitzel iskarev alav v'adayin uktas rachel. When he wants to come close to his son or come close to his father, but he's still k'tzas rachel. He's not very rachel. If he's very, very remote, then it's a different pchina. but he's still somewhat far, and he wants to get close. What happens? Then the love is visible, it's conspicuous, it protrudes, it's expressed from the heart outwards. Where do you see it? Ashreit. Abba, Abba. Tata, Tata, Father, Father. He's still far and he wants to get close. And the excitement and the enthusiasm it brings out the deep passion and the deep love. So everything that's in the heart doesn't remain dormant, it comes out. And it comes out in a tzayk, in a scream, which is basically the eish burning. It's a blaze of love. That's the scream of Abba, Abba. But when there's no richuk anymore, when he's mamish by his father, when they actually meet, what happens now? Hine, now his words, Hine halev, the heart, toichoi rotzuf ahava. So he's paraphrasing Shir Hashirim. The inside of the heart, rotzuf is from the word like ritzpah. It's tiled. It's floor. Toichoi, the inside is rotzuf ahava. It's completely covered with love. Aval eina niris v'niglas chutz man alev. But it's not visible outside. V'lachei nikra b'chinas mayim, this is called mayim, shemekarer b'chinas ha'esh, shaloitis gala l'chutzkim, instead is b'tay chalev. That's the mayim that extinguishes, it cools off the chayim ha'esh. Not that the esh is not there. The esh remains inside and doesn't come out because the relationship has now reached a much deeper place.
It's your airport, Mashal, when you greet somebody at the airport.
Right.
What is it?
Let's say the father didn't see his son for 2-3 years, right? Or the other way around. And you come to the airport and you see from far your child or your father. So you scream from excitement. I'm talking a person who's not self-conscious. You're so excited, you run, you scream, there's a passion there. Now you meet him and you meet him to chapkeni, you give a hug. Now you should start screaming. Now you're quiet. You hug, but kvitchet nicht. You don't see they're hugging each other. Hepton kvitchen, screaming and hollering. There's something off. Before, yeah, but now not. Why? Verkehrt. You met them. Now is the excitement. This is your dream. You waited for a few years. This is it. But it's not like that. So what is it? So we usually don't articulate it. But the word is, if you start screaming, then there's something very off. As mekvitchet yemalt.
Men or women? The women we keep more emotional.
Verkehrt, also. The mother is meeting her daughter, or the mother is meeting her son, or the woman is meeting her best friend. So before that, this tremendous expression of passion. After that, when you're actually hugging, sometimes you cry, but you don't. Then it's not a scream. Before that is the scream. Then it's silence.
In general, the women more emotional.
Fine, b'chlal. So you're saying you should give a mashal of women, you want?
No.
So give a mashal of
I
women.
did a great mashal.
Why is he given mushal have so then usually a have it goes from the father to the son, not so much the son usually doesn't love father.
Because the nimshal is the avas ben alav, but the mashal could be the aval ben also.
Son loves the father. Obviously, son loves the father. He just doesn't know how to. There's a lot of blockages, but he wants to.
A son loves a father. That was the biggest. A son loves a father. It's sometimes hard. Again, there's, like he says, there's blockages.
When the father doesn't love his father, then the son can love his father. Maybe.
Okay, Reb Nochem, thank you for the clarification. And it all goes back to Adam, who didn't like himself, right?
That's
The baby you see is also people.
Huh?
The baby and the mother.
Right. Yeah. You mean the baby is screaming, and then when they connect. And that's why in davening we have the same concept. You reach Shemona Esra, and in Shulchan Aruch the halach is Shemona Esra is belachash. It's quiet. L'chayre you should ask. Psukkah de Zimra dav zich kochen. The passion. Birchis Krishma is with a koch. Shemona Esra. The Gemara says, "Avde kamei mari." You're in front of the Melech. Dalefnei miyat ha'omet. Shemona Esra is the highlight of davening. Here's where Eshters scream. And even in Karlin, in Stalin, where they scream all davening, they scream on top of their lungs. But even then, Shemona Esra is quiet. What happened? What happens? You forgot about me. So he says, no. Keep it psukkah de zimra. When you're in psukkah de zimra, before Shmonas, at the beginning of davening, hu ma'oided a sa'ava kirish beyesh. Now you arouse the love that's like a fire. And whenever there's a fire, there's combat. Fire can only live from destroying something. If fire does not destroy, it doesn't live, it dies. Hashem Elokecha eish oichlo. Passion needs to burn up, something has to yield, something has to give way. So psukkah de zimri, you're ma'oida the eish, and that eish burns up. It burns up the thorns, it burns up the weeds, it burns up the ishim that are eish zarakana. In fact, the Balatanya says elsewhere, psukkah de zimra means not only song, verses of song, zimra, but also from the Lashon, the Gemara says, we have a Masechta Shabbos, hazoymer, zoymer aritzim, weed out. You have to weed out the thorns of a tree. Psukkah de zimra are the verses that let you weed out. The avoid of psukkah de zimra is to be able to find the fire, which again includes two states, the hedyet, mitzvah lavim in a hedyet, and the eish alamayla, and that's where the psukkah de zimra is. Excuse me.
Cutting or singing?
Cutting. Both. The zimra, the passion, comes from the cutting. Where the person is, so to speak, as though he's distant from the king. He says ki'ilu because in the nimshal, he's not really distant, but in the emotional experience is a distant. In tefillah, you're actually hugging. The ben and the av are now one. What are you screaming? The screaming here represents a distance. So when there's a distance, you're fighting, you're competing with the other eish. Now passion is appropriate. This calls passion. The scream, Father, Father, Abba, Abba, where are you? Come. That represents the truth of the moment. When I'm with my father and you start screaming, Father, Father, as dov, was schreist? Huh? You whisper, yeah, you whisper. Or you don't say anything. There's a melting away, and you experience the light. You experience tainug. Just to be together, oneness. Right, together.
So why do we say words?
Huh? Speak for yourself.
Still speak to the Father, but on the calm level.
Yeah, it's belachash, yeah. Bachashay, belachash, bachashay. Where psukkah de zimra is the eish. I'll give a mashal to illustrate this. The mashal was given by Chassidim to explain this idea of the Balatanya. And it's a very interesting mashal, and it really brings out the point. There was a Jew who was very wealthy. And one night for dinner he invited a poor man to his table. The poor man was used to eating a few crumbs of bread a day with a cup of water. He walks into the wealthy man's house and just looking at the table set beautifully with the chairs and the tablecloth and the expensive cutlery and the exquisite dishes already triggered him with such a spilus. He's like, wow, 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 unbelievable. He sits down on the chair and he sinks in. He's like, this is amazing, incredible. And then the first course comes, the soup comes, and he can't believe his eyes. Right, he's excited. And every spoon that he puts into his mouth, he doesn't stop singing the praises of the soup. Never mind when the chicken comes, and the meat, and the vegetables, and all the other courses, this man is in ecstasy. In the kitchen, you have the chefs, they're talking to each other. And they're watching the scene. The poor man doesn't stop extolling the virtues of the food. The wealthy man comes in, his spilus, he sits down, he eats. So one chef tells the other chef, finally there's somebody who appreciates what we do. the table that we set up, the cuisine, the quality of the food, the service. Finally, one person appreciates it. One person appreciates it. He says, no, you're making a mistake. You're making a mistake. It's the other way around. He says, what do you mean? So I'll prove it to you. Tomorrow, let's see what happens tomorrow. Tomorrow is the same mice, the poor person comes, but instead of serving a meal as they should serve, they bring out a poor person's meal. A couple of pieces of dark, old, stale bread with a shtickle kartoffel, with a piece of potato that's half-baked, and that's what they bring. The poor man looks at it, and he's like, okay, back to the usual. And he starts eating. The wealthy man gets into a rage. He starts hollering and screaming, Eshreit. He wants to fire everybody. Suddenly, as I rise from the kalim, he's so frustrated. So the chef says, what happened yesterday? He was so calm. Today he's so upset. What happened? Where's the passion coming from? So he says, I'll explain it to you. He is much more connected to this food than the poor person. It became so much a part of him that it doesn't evoke excitement anymore. He takes it for granted. Just like when you're alive, you're breathing, you don't focus and get excited because you take it for granted. It's part of you. It's who you are. The poor man, for him, the food is a chiddush. Because it's a chiddush, he's behispilus. He's overwhelmed from the novelty, from the newness. The cry, the hispilus always comes because there's a gulf between you and the treasure, and you can't believe you're getting it, or you're gonna get it, or it's coming close to you, and it's taking you out of your kalim because it's a new thing for you. He says, for the wealthy man, this is him, he's one with it. So he's quiet. Not because he's disconnected, because he's completely connected. Where do you see the difference? When you take it away. For the poor person, you take it away? No. The wealthy man, you can't take it away from him. It's inseparable. You now took away a piece of his heart.
New money is always noisier than old money.
New money, yeah. I once heard from Rabbi YY Khan. He said that there was a yeshiva in Russia, in Rostov, there was a yeshiva. And there was a big hunger there in the early 20s. And the boys' mamish didn't have what to eat. And one time somebody brought a kachka. How do you say a kachka?
A duck.
A duck. And they saw a duck for dinner, they brought it in. So all of them, you know what, if you ever went to a hotel, what it looks like Acher and Shal Pesach when they bring out the pizza, Mitzvah Yom Tov, so you see some of the smorgasbord, how the oilam jumps. They all jumped on the duck to eat. Punk that day, a supporter, a gvir, who was a supporter of the yeshiva, came to see. And he comes in and he takes a look. So he tells one of the mashgichim, he says, this is how Bnei Torah behave. They jump on the duck. I mean, there was a hunger. He was very, very unimpressed. So this mashgiach tells him the story, this mashal. And he says, how do you eat? He says, very calm. He says, you eat so calm, weil du bist the kachke. You are the duck. For them, the duck is a chiddush. It's a new thing. They jump it. It's like, wow, I can't believe I have it. He says, of course you believe you have it. Du bist geworden the kachke. Why should you be excited? This is you. I don't know how much money he gave afterwards, but the vart is a good vart. One of the bachim who was older, he was one of the, said this to him. Said this to him. Now let's understand the vart. What does this mean? When a person is excited about something, it demonstrates there's a closeness. If I don't care about it, why am I excited? When I'm screaming, Abba, Abba, whatever I'm screaming, there's a closeness. He says, Rachek tzas. So on one level, you're very close, but now take it one step deeper. Why am I getting so excited? I'm getting so excited. All excitement represents the fact that there's a fire that's burning something up that's alien. All excitement is coming from the fact that I'm passionate about it because there's something in the way, there's standing in the way, and the hispilus, the passion, is an expression of crossing the gulf between where I am and where I want to be, or where I could be, or I should be, or where I feel I yearn to be.
Resistance.
It's the resistance that I'm overcoming. All of it. That's what he says in Torah in Miketz, the Chanukah Maimarim. We learned once that there's a difference how the log burns, and how straw burns, and how oil burns. When the log burns, it's koilus of rakim. You make a bonfire, you put in a log, a shtik holz, a große shtik holz, and it burns with koilus. You put in straw or twigs, there's like a sizzle. Oil burns b'chashoy, silence. So the Balatanya explains it through spiritual science. He says a log has an ego, doesn't want to get burnt up. You put me in fire, I resist. You see, it's not easy to get a log on fire. It resists. And when you get the log on fire, it burns b'koilas because there's tremendous resistance. He says the straw is more edel. It's not so brute. It's not so crude. It's not so dense. So it submits with less koilas. And he says oil, shemen, is bittul. So it yields, it submits to the flame in silence. Because there's no resistance. It belongs there. It's consumed in its own source, in its natural source. So now you have a Jew's relationship with another person, your best friend, your spouse, your father, your mother, somebody very, very close to you. Think about the person who's closest to you in your life, but taka close to you, emotionally close. Here the mashal is the child and the father, but think about it in your own life. And you haven't seen them in years, and you miss them. Think about your own child, perhaps, and you miss them, and you see them, and you get very excited, you get very emotional, and you start screaming. What's the scream? The scream is there's spilers that comes from the fact that there's a distance, and you want to overcome that distance, and all the yearning is there, and it's yearning to something you don't have. Now I met my child after a few years, and I'm hugging him. Now screaming is, you're off. Was schreist du? Why are you screaming? Now it's a moment of tainug, not a moment of tzimoyen. There's tzimoyen and there's tainug. Tzimoyen is thirst. Tainug is geschmack, pleasure. Now it's tainug. This is mayim, it's not ish. Not because there's no kesher, not because there's no dvekas, because there's a much deeper dvekas. This is not his spilus, this is called dvekas. His spilus means you're distant and you're affected. Dvekas means you're completely one. And because you're completely one, there's no screaming and there's no expression of the excitement, not because it's not there, because there's no gulf, because you're completely there. You melt away in it. There's no distance, and therefore there's no ego, there's no I. The poor man, he's so alien to this world, it's like, wow, 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 because he's distant from this world. He's never one with it. The Gvir is so quiet about it because it's completely integrated. I am one with it. There's no distance anymore. In other words, there's no I and you that are trying to come together. The log has an I and the fire is a you, and they're fighting. And the fighting creates the spilus. What this means is it's a very subtle observation. His spilus represents so much closeness, and yet it represents so much distance. That's why. Ktsas. There's the distance which I'm overcoming through the passion. It's the eish. So in davening you have these two states. In Psukkah the Zimra is the pchin of eish. And the eish is burning. And that's powerful. I'm yearning, I'm trying to overcome, I want to get there, I'm searching. I'm screaming, Abba, Abba, Father, Father. Then there's the pchin of Shemona Esther, no hispilas, now it's dvekas. What's dvekas? Dvekas is the tainug. You just melt away. There's no you and I anymore. So why are you screaming? The screaming represents that I want to get to you. In other words, the I is far from you, somewhat far from you. But here the I and you are enmeshed in one. We just melt away in this ecstasy, in this tainug. So therefore there's no richuk. And that's why there's no screaming, there's no tzayke. That's the mayim that cools off the chayma ish. It's mekada the chayma ish.
So screaming shows a lack of confidence.
Not so much about confidence. I don't know what do you mean by a lack of confidence.
You don't feel you belong there. You don't feel. That's why you.
Okay, that could be true. That could be true. There were tzaddikim throughout the generations, different types of davening. those who daven with tremendous hispilus, tremendous screaming, tremendous passion. They throw up their hands and sway their bodies and jump and dance. Literally gekvitchet, geschrien, they screamed, they hollered. There were others that by davening, if you looked, you almost saw nothing. If you didn't have the right eyes, you'd even think the person is cold and detached. They're like careless. There's no tnuah, nothing. Mamash no tnuah. So sometimes a person is so quiet because their taka not there. They're not excited, they're not there. But sometimes you have to have a chush, sometimes it's deeper. They're much more there. And because they're much more there, it's kvitchet menisht. You have, especially in the Chassidish world, people think sometimes that a relationship with God is about screaming. And the more you scream, the more the relationship. It's really the other way around. Now, we're not even talking about a type of screaming that he's not addressing because it's not oila shulchan malachim. Sometimes people scream by davening because they feel nothing. That he's not even addressing because that's like a Nebuch situation. You mamish feel nothing, but it's Ne'ilah, it's Kol Nidre, it's Rosh Hashanah, and you feel nothing. If you would be honest with yourself and with God, you would say that. But to say to yourself that it's Ne'ilah and I feel nothing, not only nothing, worse than I feel a Pashat Mitvach, right? It's pretty ugly. So what do? To overcome that, you scream like a Meshugana. But you could see the whole psych, but that's not Oila Shulchan Malachim. That's not Tipper.
There your resistance is...
There you're also resisting. You're trying to resist the truth about yourself. You're also resisting. You're trying to scream at yourself. Stop telling me who you are. Stop telling me you don't feel. I'm going to make you feel. A Yid once came into shul, he was screaming, davening. So a chassid went over to me and says, was schreist das geprüft mit Guten? Before you scream, try this. So sometimes people scream and they start banging and banging and banging. And the more they scream, the less they're feeling. You're tough is what I'm saying.
They're fighting their apathy.
They're fighting their apathy in a way that strengthens their apathy.
But they're waking up their deep emotions maybe, sometimes. Sometimes.
Now we have a new Havana. Chana, Kol Lo Yishamea.
Yeah, Kol Lo Yishamea by Chana. Yeah. When Rosh Hashanah?
When you yell, I can't hear you.
Huh?
When you yell,
yeah.
I can't hear you.
What do they say? What do they tell lawyers? They say when emotions are on your side, if you're defending a person, and emotionally you can get to the jury, because, it's a sensitive thing and you could show this person is innocent or guilty, whatever, then scream emotions. When the law is on your side, pound the law. Just pound the law, even if it's cruel, but you pound the law. If not the law is on your side, and not emotions are on your side, then pound the table. And that's what lawyers do. They start pounding. I'm not going to allow this evil in the 21st century in America. But the screaming is dramatic. The jury says, yeah, machal, machal, machal. You pound the table. Why do you pound the table? Because you got nothing to say. Divrei chachamim benachas nishmayim. It's part of this yisoid. Not divrei chachamim, of course, benachas nishmayim. When you don't have an argument, you yell. When do people start calling you an apikaitis? When? Usually? When they have no answer. You ask me a question, I have no answer. What do I say? Apikoursis. I take out that card.
So when a rebbe beats up a child, it's the same way?
You always manage to bring it to the subject.
But we have
It's
the but we have the concept, the cry to Hashem. We never have the quiet.
Avada, Perek Aleph and Beis, he spoke by Yitzhaku al Hashem. The whole Mayim until now was about crying and psyche. I'm just saying this article, it's important to say in our generation. That sometimes the screaming is B'chal Nar Oila Shulchan Malachim. It's also resistance, but it's Nebuch, the person is in a web of horrible sheker. And the louder they scream, the worse Mitzvah Yom Kippur, by the way. The louder you scream, the worse is the results afterwards. Ki yadua maforsam. But here we're talking even a much more sophisticated b'china. This is Atzaika, and there's a real emes here. I'm screaming, I'm yearning, I'm searching. I'm talking here about, that's why I spoke about tzaddikim, people. I don't only mean tzaddikim, I mean people who, in a very honest place, their davening was all screaming. A lot of it. And what was it? It's ispilus. And you look at it, and it's genuine, and it's very, very, it's very powerful. And it makes a deep impression. But really, there's something much deeper. When there's real oneness, when there's real dveikus, there's nothing. You don't see anything. You don't see. It's quiet. You know why? There's no you to scream. The you melted away. You're not there. Was schreist du? The screaming shows how much the ego is still present. It's beautiful because you're trying to overcome the law. You're trying to get to the Father. It's gewaldig. But realize the distance. In dveikus, that's mayim. There's no. It's cold. It's cold. There's no flame. There's no blaze. It looks like everything is extinguished. Why? Not because there's no fire. Because it's beyond fire. Because it's completely one. Because you're already burnt up. You're already consumed. I'm already part of it. We're together. We're one. So the fire can't exist anymore. Fire needs to burn something up. There's nothing to burn up. That's why he calls it bittul b'metzias. Bittul b'metzias means there's no ego that's separate anymore. I'm already consumed. If I'm consumed, the fire can't exist. What is it? Mayim. Atareisa ladas. When there was hareisa, einoid mulvade. What says einoid mulvade? Einoid mulvade means they weren't excited about God. Being excited about God means that you're distant from God. The rest. So you now understand here. You'll speak to people who know a little bit about Jewish spirituality or Chassidus. They'll say, "What's Chassidus?" To get excited about Hashem. The Balatanya says, "Yeah, but that's Eish." To be excited about God means I'm still far. I'm not excited. In Mayim, I'm not excited about it. I'm not excited. I'm just one. In that hug, in that embrace, I don't even feel myself. When I don't feel myself, I can't be excited. Excitement means I feel myself and I'm trying to overcome that. So I remember I went with my wife to the Grand Canyon once in Arizona. So I read before about it. I read up here, but I just wanted to see it and I saw pictures and this. So I thought I knew what I'm going to see. And then I remember I came there, so we parked and you go there. And I took a look. And I remember for 30 seconds I lost my my breath. I lost my standing. I was like, it startled me. It overwhelmed me. I couldn't get that. You can't get that vision from the pictures. Mark Twain said, when God created the Grand Canyon, He did not create the adjectives with which to describe it. So, and then when I came back to myself, so to speak, I realized this you can't prepare for. Because this is something where you get lost in the process. So you're not excited, you're not screaming, you're not howling. You're not like, wow, this is amazing, this is beautiful. Today it's not shaykh anymore because people come to take pictures. They're not experiencing it. Right? You're busy taking the picture so you could tell somebody else you were there. But it's not about your experience of it. If you could talk about your experience, you're not experiencing it. You're experiencing yourself. When you're experiencing God, you're not experiencing God, you're experiencing your emotions about God. When you experience the divine, there's no experience. And when there's no experience, what does it look like? It looks like mayim that was poured on the fire, and there's no fire anymore. Not because there's no fire, because you went to a place that's much deeper than fire. You went to a place of mayim.
Well, what's the tonic?
Tainuk.
Shouldn't it be ashes?
That's the Yeminu Techapkeni. So when he said before that from Yom Kippur you come to Sukkos, the tzmicha of the Ava, the Eish Shalamayla, Sukkos is deeper than the Eish Shalamayla. Sukkos is Nisach HaMayim. What's the Nisach HaMayim? The Nisach HaMayim is the ability to melt away in Ava Kamayim, in the Tainug of Elikos, without any resistance.
Any wine.
Without a why, without overcoming
Wine.
anything.
You don't need to,
Without the wine, water, yeah. Which is, of course, also in wine and water. Wine is an intoxicating beverage. It's something outside of you that makes you lebedik. Water You don't get drunk on water.
So why was there so much dancing? Dancing sounds like the resistance. It's my
The Simchas Beis HaShe'eva, the dancing you're asking, was not resistance. There's two types of dancing. There's a dancing where you're trying to resist. But then there's a dancing where you let go. You're just celebrating a relationship. It's a different type of dancing. Just like in davening, there's two types of kvitching. There's a dancing where it's like, I'm going to make myself happy.
That's the flow.
And then there's like those who surf in the ocean. A surfer once told me, he says the chush is you never fight the waves. There's no, you go. You're part of the ocean. You're in the ocean. You don't even feel yourself distinct. It goes up, it goes down. You never combat the waves. Eish is a combat. Eish always is combative. It's confrontational. Make me a fire and I'll show you confrontation. Something has to get burnt up. Something is being confronted. Hashem Elokecha, Eish Oichla. Mayim doesn't confront. Al derech, hallelujah b'machal. The dance, yeah. So there's two types of dance. The dancing that's also I'm overcoming resistance. But then there's a dance where you just, yeah, the person.
You can see it by weddings. Some people dance so hard. Some people just go with the flow in the air.
Yeah, and the core, the real dancing is when there's no self-consciousness. You'll see when people are self-conscious, they can't dance. It's a forced dance, right? And they're always looking around. To really dance, you have to lose your self-consciousness. That's what real dancing is, and that's what real simcha is. It's tainug. When you're not self-conscious, when you don't feel the self, you could really dance. You just let go. You let go. It's not an easy thing. You remember at your daughter's wedding?
Is there a difference between the Birkas Oneichi Ofa Ve'efer and the Mayim?
Avada, Anoichi Ofa Ve'efer is still the Hagdama. It's the Hagdama, it's the Asher Simei Tshuva, it's Yom Kippur, that's even before the Eish Alamayla. So we have three dimensions. You have Anoichi Ofa Ve'efer is the Eish Alamata. You have Eish Alamayla, which is a whole year. Now remember, his pilus is not a small thing. A whole year, that was the avoid in the Beis HaMikdash. Mat Geshri and Abba Abba. You come to the third Madrege, but after Revatel Zayin Madrege, it's just the sense, the subtlety of it. The subtlety of it.
Juggling is also magic. You don't do when you do when you're not.
Juggling also. All the juggling by Simchas Beis HaShe'eva, there was no self-consciousness there. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, imagine today, yeah? I'm not going to say names, but Reb Shimon ben Gamliel was considered the Rebbe of the generation. And what was he doing by Simchas Beis HaShe'eva? He was juggling 8 torches. Today, who juggles? The kids who were thrown out of yeshiva. The kids who at 16 were thrown out of yeshiva, and instead of going there, Baruch Hashem, they went into juggling school. David HaMelech. But in this Man HaShas, it wasn't like that. The Gemara says in Sukkah, who juggled? Shmuel, Abaya, Levi, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, Reb Ze'er, Reb Shmuel bar Reb Yitzchak would juggle Hadassim by the Chasanas. These were mamish the G'dolei Adar, the top Rosh Yeshivas, the top Rebbes. They would stand and juggle. Today, what would it look like?
That means that
all the websites would make fun of
that. They
that.
had to practice at other times as well.
Very good. The gefinst allemaal they're weak. Very good.
It's not weak, it's strength.
No, I understand. They pastors, they had to practice, yeah. After the shir, before the shir, but that you're dealing with mamish with literally the G'dolei Hadar, not the Pesach. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel was the nasi of the Sanhedrin. Rambam says Oimid b'mkay Moshe Rabbeinu. He's juggling by Simchas Beis HaShe'eva. Was juggles to? Darf machen azoi, glanzen mit der Augen and machen azoi and hold on to this. So you understand that sometimes we live a little bit in a different Judaism. It's very, very self-conscious. A lot of our Jews, which has nothing to do with Judaism, doesn't even have to do with the first Bechina. The first Bechina is not self-conscious. The first Bechina is, it's a self-consciousness that's very subtle. I'm screaming, Father, Father, I'm in a very deep relationship. But the relationship is not so profound that he could say that there's no explosion. There's an explosion. In Mayim, there's no explosion. There's just complete intimacy. tell you two moments that just for me personally they speak to, but every person in their own life can. I saw the Lubavitcher Rebbe daven for many, many years. From when I was a little child. And he would not move during davening. Not Shabbos, not Yom Tov, not the weekdays, not Rosh Hashanah, not Yom Kippur, not Kol Nidrei, not Nehila. Would not move. And so when I was younger, I always saw it. So a Yid once told me, he was a Yid, a Choshev Yid, who grew up in a different community. And he told me he came once Rosh Hashanah to 770. And he walked in from a different neighborhood. And he started to look at the Rebbe, and the Rebbe was standing at the stand and not moving. And he said that transformed his life. Because he was used to me schreit, me springt, me kwitscht. And it was fascinating to see. It could be Yom Kippur by Ne'ilah. People by Ne'ilah, even people who don't daven a whole year. Right? They scream, Yud Gimel. Everybody me schreit. And it's not a fake thing. It's sometimes, again, I'm not talking but sometimes it's where the person is, and it's very genuine. And it was fascinating to see it would remain the same place, almost not even sway, almost not shake, in the same place for hours and hours, and there was literally no movement. So he once told a story that the Alter Rebbe, the Balatanya, when he davened, it was with a lot of emotion. The Mittler Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe wouldn't move. He said he had a streimel that was spitzig, a pointed streimel. And once the Gabbai showed somebody that in the middle of davening, fara is vapor. Vapor came out from the spitz of the streimel, from the point of the streimel, the vapor came out by the Mittler Rebbe, the son of the Balatanya. That's how deep it was. But you have to have a chush for this. Because you could look at somebody not moving and say, okay, they're not interested, they're cold. Mayim could look cold, and really it's much hotter than fire. What looks cold is often much hotter than fire. In real emotional intimacy, there's no sounds. In real emotional intimacy, there's no resistance. In real emotional intimacy, you're not overcoming anything. So in real emotional intimacy, there's no outcry of an explosion of emotion because you already melted away. Fakert. If you would start screaming and hollering and singing and pounding, it would only degrade. It would degrade one's spirituality. It doesn't work. It's the wrong moment. It's like bringing in a photographer into a moment of intimacy. It's a moment of intimacy. It's not about the picture. One scene. So it was once. I wanted to say. So it was once by the end of Ne'ilah, and it was Shabbos. Yom Kippur was Shabbos, and so you say Avinu Malkeinu once, right, by the end of Ne'ilah. And after Avinu Malkeinu, there's Shema Yisrael and Baruch Shem and Hashem Hu Elokim. So I was a child. And the Rebbe was standing by his place, and he wasn't moving all Yom Kippur. He would stand or sit, and literally, say everything and look. He would say Tehillim a lot by the Piyutim. He would say Tehillim, or he had the Kavanas of the Arizal over there, but you saw no Ispilus. And so they were singing Avinu Malkeinu, the Alter Rebbe's niggin, then they sang it, and they finished Avinu Malkeinu. And they saw that the Rebbe was still saying Avinu Malkeinu or davening, so the Chazan was waiting to say Shema Yisrael, because it looked like the Rebbe wasn't finished Avinu Malkeinu. So it became quiet in shul. And suddenly, I was close, I heard tremendous sobbing. And I took a look, the Rebbe was under his talis. He wasn't moving, but he was sobbing under his talis, and it was like extraordinarily insightful for me and emotional, because from the outside, when there was noise, you couldn't see anything. It looked like just a person standing and davening. But suddenly there was over there was actually an explosion of emotion that was startling to me. And then I realized a person could stand in one place, very, very quiet, literally not move even a part of their body. And sometimes it's not that there's no emotion, it's so deep that no one can see it, no one can experience it. One moment. A second moment I wanted to describe to you was, a lot of guests would come for Tishrei. A lot of guests. And then they would leave after Tishrei. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe would come out of shul to escort them. So when the bus came to take the people to the airport from Eretz Yisrael or other places, this is the earlier years. So he would come out and they would sing a niggin and he would watch all the archim go to the airport. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. It was like Katzeichem L'Shalom, Gezegenedzach. So the Rebbe was standing in front outside, and he would look at everybody and wave or make with his give an encouragement with his hand. There was one Yid from Eretz Yisrael who was very close to the Rebbe. He was a Bal Tshuva. He drove a tractor. He was a very interesting person. He was a very emotional man, and he was a very big chassid. And he was very close to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And it was very hard for him to leave emotionally, like when you're leaving from somebody very close to you. So he was standing there on the parkway, Eastern Parkway, and the Rebbe was on the top in front of shul. The Rebbe would look at all the guests, and they were going onto the bus, and the Chavre would sing a niggin, the Bachrim, whoever was they would sing. They would go a rikku, the Archim would dance, and they would go off. And the Rebbe was looking around, and at some point, their eyes got fixed on each other. The eyes of this chassid and the eyes of the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe had eyes penetrating us. They got fixed at each other. It was far away. He was by the shul and he was by the street going onto the bus, but they got fixed. And they were looking at each other. And this man, the chassid who was leaving the Eretz, was crying. He was weeping. The Rebbe was just looking at him, but with a complete gaze, unwavering. 2 eyes were fixed on his eyes. And the Rebbe did not move. He was just looking and did not say a word, did not express any emotion. But it would be hard in life to be able to see a deeper dveikus between people. A deeper dveikus. Because any words or even expression would only diminish and compromise the power of the moment. It was just a gaze. It couldn't be captured in words. But you saw the pchina of a nafshik shura benafsha. What it means that a Rebbe, his whole essence, he gives over to a chassid. V'nafshik shura benafsha, there was nothing else. The entire etzem hanefesh was like fixed onto this person, and this person was fixed onto this person, eyes to eyes. It wasn't screaming. The chassid was crying. It wasn't screaming. It's a moment of dveikus. Dveikus means you don't fail yourself. There's no ego. If you don't feel yourself, there's nobody to scream. You just enjoy the experience without even experiencing the joy in a self-conscious way. This was just a very powerful illustration of this type of oneness. We're not used to it in our vocabulary. Either Judaism is dead, or if it's alive, there's a lot of ruckus. There's a lot of ruckus, a lot of commotion. But the ultimate experience is Mayim, not Eish. This doesn't diminish Eish. Eish is Eish. You can't compete with Eish. But Mayim is much deeper. So what does this mean in Avodah? Comes Sukkos. The Sukkah is the hug. When you're being hugged, you don't scream. You just melt away in the hug. You just melt away. So that the avodah of Sukkos is Nisach HaMayim. That's the connection of the Sukkah and Nisach HaMayim. So there was also a fire on Sukkot. There used to be makir of the karbanos on Sukkos also. They had the 70 bulls besides the regular karbanos. But the uniqueness of Sukkos is, after he explained Eish Shalamata, after he explained Eish Shalamayla, after he explained Yom Kippur, he says, you come to Sukkos. What Sukkos? Sukkos, they poured water on the Mizbech. This explains why Misha Loira Simchas Beis HaSheyeva What's the big deal? How do you make a statement? If you weren't by Simchas Beis HaSheva, you were never happy. Come on. What are the Chazal trying to say? And what are we supposed to feel? Like, why would they tell this to anybody? It's like people will say, if you weren't at last night's chasana, you'll never be at a chasana again. You want to be mechazek Yidden? They say, Misha leira binyan hordus, leira binyan na miyamav. Okay. Misha leira simchas beis hasheva, leira simcha miyamav. What's the point? And what does it even mean? What if you're dancing at your child's wedding, you're besimcha, well, leira simcha. So you were by simchas beis hasheva. Misha leira simchas beis hasheva. What's the havana? But now we can understand it. First of all, we understand what's the simcha of Nisach HaMayim. What's tanzman a ganze Nacht? Nisach HaYayin, you don't dance. Nisach HaMayim, you dance. Because Nisach HaYayin, there's still the b'china of Eish. And whenever there's the b'china of Eish, there's missing in the simcha. It's more the tzayke, it's the yearning, it's the longing. In Nisach HaMayim, where there's complete oneness, this is where the simcha, the ultimate joy came out. Ultimate joy is when there's complete oneness. Misha leira simchas beis hasheva leira simcha meyamav means the Chazal are saying, don't underestimate what real simcha is. Don't reduce real simcha to pseudo simcha, to fake simcha, not to fake simcha, to more superficial simcha. Misha leira simchas beis hasheva. If you're not toifus, the chiddush, the pchin of simchas beis hasheva leira simcha meyamav. In a person's life, it's hard for them to experience what this type of simcha is. It's the simcha not of his spilus, it's the simcha of dveikus. Not the simcha of Eish, the simcha of Maya. So 7 days of Sukkos, there was this special avodah of Nisach HaMayim. Okay. A guten Yom Tov, everybody.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.